Hello, I'm Byron. Welcome back to Civilization 3 Conquest, Mesopotamia Campaign. We're working on getting the Great Lighthouse. If you remember, we just have a few turns left to get that done. And it's looking okay. I think we're a little bit behind in terms of score, but if we can get the lighthouse going, we can ultimately win the game. And the trouble, let's see, we have 7 turns to get navigation, and I believe I've switched to building a palace in the city that's going to build the lighthouse, so I can just switch right to the lighthouse. Alright, so today's topic is the movie Fences. And it came out recently over the Christmas holiday, and when it came out I got loads of fun telling people that I was in it. First thing you need to know is I'm a white guy, so, and I don't think there are any white, I guess there are a few white people in the movie, but it's fun to tell people you were in the movie, because I wasn't in the movie, I was in the play, and it wasn't it was in high school, but it wasn't the big high school production. It was just something we did in drama class. I played Gabe, who had the trumpet, and it was so long ago I couldn't really remember, and it was a while before Gabe shows up in the movie, so I'm like, I don't know. And when Fiddler showed up first, I thought, well, maybe I played Fiddler and I'm just getting confused with something else. But then Gabe showed up pretty quickly. And I remember on the exam that we had for that, that was basically the final exam, was talking about that movie, play. And I completely BS'd it. I just started writing, pulling in random things from, I think, Ecclesiastes from the Bible. I compared it to that. It had nothing to do with that, but the teacher didn't know, and they tend to be impressed when you're able to bring outside things in and compare, and since she didn't know anything about it, she just assumed I knew what I was talking about, and I got a pretty good grade on it, even though it was total BS. It's a good tip for anyone out there taking tests. If you can go over the teacher's head with your BS, of course you have to do something that's separate from the subject you're talking about in some way. But if you go over their head, they'll get you an okay grade. The one main thing I can remember from the movie, civil rights is a part of the movie, but it's really not a big part. Hold on. The movie almost postulates that civil rights is over, that we've reached equality, which of course wasn't true. It was part of a cycle of 10 plays, of which I have not seen any of them. I'd like to see the other ones, but I don't know if I'll be able to do that. And of course the entire cycle had to do with race, and perhaps it was just in this one play that it was beneficial to pretend that racial injustice was a thing of the past, and deal with people who couldn't move on from there being the injustices happening in the past, and maybe the other plays would deal with the continued injustice. And from that, getting back to that, the only scene I could remember really vividly, besides the big climax, which, spoiler alert, was when Rose, shucks, I forget her name, she's the one Viola Davis plays, she says, "You a womanless man." That's the only real part I can remember. That's, of course, the big thing. But the only other thing I remember is how he's a driver. He doesn't like how black people never get to drive the truck. And he's like, man, we should be able to drive the truck. And then he gets to drive the truck. And not shortly after, he's like, man, it's so much worse to drive the truck. You're better off lifting the bins. So no matter what happens, it seems like he's not going to be happy. And that's one of the vivid things I remember. And Viola Davis was amazing. She was so good. And to explain how good she was, when we were doing the play in high school, that character did not stand out any more or less than the other ones, the way she did in the film. She was just amazing. But I didn't go to see the film because of Viola Davis. I went partly because I knew about it and I knew it was a great film, and I encouraged everyone I do to go see it. But one of the reasons I went was Denzel Washington, who was honestly, I think, not that good in the movie. I think the problem was that he was trying to direct it also, and that maybe what helped Viola Davis do so well was that the guy she was playing against, or not against, but opposite, was the director, which maybe helped her out in her performance of the play. And honestly, almost everyone in the movie, I thought, did a better job than Denzel Washington. And Denzel's a great actor, and he did fine. He did great as an actor, but I think maybe the actor-director, he wasn't quite able to pull that off. And the direction was great. The directing was fine. He perhaps wisely decided, since maybe he lacks the ability to focus more on the directing. And so that was how I felt about that. Okay, so in the game, let's go back to the game, see what's going on. We've got 3 turns to build a lighthouse. Of course, we're going to lose the population. And we have 4 turns left in the game. If we can chop some of these forests, I think we can get it. I've signed a protection pact. I'm mostly ignoring all the other cities here and focusing on getting that lighthouse, because that's the game right there, that one city. I mean, people could come in and invade and take every other city, and it wouldn't make much of a difference. 2 turns from winning the game. Of course, the military is a huge part of this game, but if you sort of plan it right, you can sort of avoid it in this scenario. And that mostly involves just giving people money, and if they ask for something, just saying yes so that they don't declare war on you. And also protection pacts. If they're offered, probably take them, because the AI is going to build its military in a way that you don't want to have to, because production. And now we have 1 turn left, and we got 6, so we might not make it. We might not be able to get it in time. I pre-recorded this, but honestly I forget what I do here. I know how it turns out, but I forget what I'm about to do. Well, and that's a loss. Somehow I remembered it ending differently. I remembered me almost about to get it, but Tyre getting the Great Lighthouse first. And they're 300 points ahead. And always in the screen, Phoenicia, no matter who I'm playing, Phoenicia gets that big early lead. From the first turn, they get some victory points. I don't know how they do that. I never played as Phoenicia, I don't think. I have played as the Medians before, and I've won. But what you want to do as the Medians is just go out and attack people. They're ideally situated to, from pretty much the very start of the game, go to war and start attacking. I've also played as Sumer. That was the first one I played because I was in. Oh, and I start the game over to try again, and I'm playing this time as Egypt, which is the easiest one. So I should win this one. It's the easiest to get the wonder victory. Excuse me. And the wonder victory is the one I was going for. No matter who I play, because it's sort of the more fun one. And the rest of the game is there'll be plenty of conquest. This is just a fun one to build wonders and just sort of SimCity turtle in that way. And the Hittites, the good way to play that one is to, you are pretty much, there's the Mycenaeans, but they typically are in a bad way and they can't really attack you. So what you want to do, and they're next to the Hittites. So as the Hittites, you want to just expand, pretty much fill up all of Turkey, and then start with war. And you can win that way. Unlike, as I was talking about the Medians, you want to start war right away. War, expansion by war with the Medians. And Egypt, what you want to do is make sure you get some coastal cities. You've actually got a nice little, in the Persian Gulf, I think, is that the Persian Gulf? Or is it the Red Sea? The one between Egypt and Arabia. No, the Persian Gulf is between Arabia and Iraq. And Iran. Arabia and Iran. And I was looking at a map the other day, and it's so odd how close Iran and Saudi Arabia are to each other. There's just that little gulf between them. And then, of course, overland you have Iraq between them. I think they're... Shucks, I used to know better about my geography, but I don't know if there's any countries between Iraq and Saudi Arabia. I honestly can't remember. So Egypt's the best one to build. I'm already starting because I remember the stone having problems and forgetting what resources go where. I'm already starting to check that and make sure I get them. Yeah, I should go for epic work projects first, just to get the worker housing, because that gives you that added production, which is a good one to get. As I said, Egypt is the easiest one to get the wonders. Just got to make sure and get that coastal city. And also, if you can be friends with Tyre or Phoenicia, they protect you from pretty much everyone else, because that's the only way in, and they're pretty much the only naval power. The only ones who can't really be a naval power because they've got so many. The Mycenaeans can, but again, they have a really rough start. I've never played as the Mycenaeans. Maybe I should do that sometime. Oh yeah, and I forgot about Civ 3. You get settlers from ruins, which is so good early game. You can just pop a city down, and I'm putting one right on the coast there. I think maybe at this point I had forgotten that you could go to the east and build some coastal cities there, which are even more protected, because if someone does come at you from the coast, they can hit you in the Mediterranean, but they really can't along the, I think, Red Sea, if I recall, because that's the Bible. Remember the Bible when he crossed the Red Sea, which apparently he didn't. It was some other sea. It was a mistranslation, but it doesn't really matter. Anyway, so back to fences. I was looking it up. I was doing research for it, and apparently, gosh, why can't I remember who he was? The name of the main character. I can't remember their names. I have a test coming up in extra class, and I'm good at everything except the people's names of what they did. I'm pretty much good at all the concepts and stuff like that, but I can't really remember the people's names who did the specific things. But I can't remember the main character's name, and it's a great movie. And I wish I could. I think Rose was the woman's name. Was who Viola Davis played, but the guy who Denzel Washington played, I looked up, and on Broadway, he was played by James Earl Jones, which, that sounds so good, just to watch, to be able to see that, and I want to see it. I looked it up. There is recordings of it. I saw a YouTube clip of the speech he gives to his son about the speech he gives to his son about people doing right by him, and that was amazing. And James Earl Jones, most people know he played Darth Vader, and most people have seen him. He's a big guy, and in the film, like, all of his bigness, especially in his arms, it's just pure bicep. He's just as big, except instead of fat, it's all muscle in that bicep, and it looks amazing. Yeah, and he does good, and I want to see the whole thing, but I was only able to see that one clip. And that one scene with the speech about doing right by you, it was part of the commercial. And a weird thing happened before the movie. I looked up commercials just to sort of, because I couldn't wait to see it, so I was watching the previews on YouTube. And I looked at the preview, and before the preview, the ad on YouTube was a preview for Fences. My problem with the preview is that it didn't, I don't know if the preview could have done this, but it didn't go into detail just about how complex the movie is. From the preview, it just looked like Black, Death of a Salesman. But it's so much more complex than Death of a Salesman. There are so many more themes and subplots going on. And of course, there's the famous scene with the womanless man, and that was a good scene. And we were doing the again, back in drama class, we had the test, and she was talking about it, and she said we had to go determine rising action, climax, falling action, and we had to determine what point the climax was. And the teacher said, well, there's two options of what you could consider the climax. One is the womanless man, and two is when he throws his son, whose name I can't remember again, but the younger son who plays football, out of the house. I said it should be the moment when he throws the son out of the house, and she insisted that it was the womanless man comment. She says because it all goes downhill for Troy. That was his name. Troy. I think. I really don't know, but I think his name was Troy. And he goes downhill, his life goes downhill from there. But that's not what's meant. I disagree, because that's not what's meant by falling action. It doesn't mean the character's fortune is tied in with the action of the actual plot. Just because the character's fortune goes downhill doesn't mean that the tension and the action of the play is not still increasing. So that's why I said it was the throwing his son out of the house. Maybe the son was named Troy. Shucks, I can't remember. So I think that throwing him out of the house was the actual climax of the movie. And then there was that really short epilogue at the end. Most, you get this, I guess it's sort of freshman English, I guess, in high school. It's sort of when I remember it. But that there's a falling action and then an epilogue. I've never really noticed a falling action segment of many movies. The climax is right at the end, and then there's maybe an epilogue, but it goes boom, straight down. There's no falling action, and I shouldn't have recorded me editing the preferences here. I don't know why I did that, or what I was even doing, what I was even looking for. But I shouldn't have had that on recording. I'm sorry. So, in a lot of ways, I guess I was smarter than my drama teacher. In a lot of ways, you can be smarter than lots of your teachers. But I've never had one who didn't know more about the subject they were teaching than I did. I already told you in the last episode about the economics professor who didn't seem to understand what the individual mandate was and how it was a tax. And his focus was health economics. He really should have known that. I don't know why. If he was just... I really don't know what he was going at. If I misunderstood what he was saying, or if he really didn't understand what it was. And we also have, in the movie, Fiddler, who was great. I just have that written down. Fiddler, great. I don't really have much more to say about that. And we're playing this, we're talking with the Mycenaeans, and you may have heard, I don't know where this originated, but I've heard in a few places that people say that everything in life, that you experience in life, is reflected in Homer. And there's the famous lament of Virgil, who sought to reflect life in his poetry. But he realized that Homer had already reflected all of life. And he lamented, that's the lament part, he lamented that there was nothing left for him to do in poetry, and that all that was left for him to do was to reflect Homer, since he couldn't reflect life anymore, because Homer had done it all. And I think, in a way, Fences and August, maybe the entire cycle, I haven't read the Pittsburgh cycle, but I get the feeling that the Pittsburgh cycle, or maybe all of August Wilson's plays, maybe also be something which can fill this role of fill that category of everything which is in life is in blank. I've also heard a lot of, especially baby boomers, talk about The Godfather, the movie The Godfather, that way, which is, not untrue. And the one I would like to add, I guess I've already added. The other one that's already been there is The Godfather and Homer. And I've already added August Wilson as a possibility. But the one I want to add that has this, and I have seen every bit of it, and it's pretty much a closed book, is The Mary Tyler Moore Show. Something about that, just all of life appears to be encapsulated within The Mary Tyler Moore Show. And in the same way as Homer. Of course, this isn't really literally true in Homer and in The Godfather. I was watching somebody point out about how in Star Wars, in all of Star Wars, there's only been, they were reviewing the latest episode of Rebels, and they said this episode of Rebels, canon and legends, and even things that aren't either, only the third, it's the first mention in the new canon of plumbing. That there's been there was a bathroom in the Dark Forces game, he says, which I may do. That's a fun one. I may do that with these Let's Plays. And there was a deleted scene, which is neither canon nor legends, technically, in a kitchen on Naboo, which features plumbing. And he says, there's no plumbing ever mentioned up until this episode in all of Star Wars. So it's really hard to have absolutely everything, and so no one really means it literally. I don't really know what they mean, but there is something to it when they say that about Homer and The Godfather. And I just want to point out that something that they're really referring to is also in, perhaps, again, I don't know because I haven't seen all of August Wilson's plays, and The Mary Tyler Moore Show. And I have finished everything I have to say with 1 minute to spare. I've built another coastal city, which is the right place for them to be when you're Egypt, like I said. Although unlike in Civ 5 and 4, you can't really come off the coast onto a city. You can in 4, you still have to use the transports, there's no embarking, and there are no melee boats to attack the cities. But you, especially in these conquests, you can't really come off the sea and onto a city. Some of the scenarios create marine units that weren't marine units just to deal with that problem. Because in the full game you have the Marines which can do it, and that's their speciality. But in they have to come, I think the musketmen in the Age of Discovery does it. Well, we're already building a wonder, and we're on a roll, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.